today you are going to cover logistic regression, I think.
I will cover the remaining part of regression, then the logistic regression. Okay. And tomorrow we will have unsupervised learning algorithm, that is the cluster analysis.
So meanwhile, dear participants, if you have any query to Dr. Masood, please ask.
Yes, any one of you have any problems related to the previous sessions?
नहीं सर, थैंक यू। आपके सेशन वैसे ही सेल्फ एक्सप्लेनेटरी है, आप बहुत बढ़िया से एक्सप्लेन करते हैं।
थैंक यू डॉक्टर सतीश। Now we have around 50 participants.
Yes. And so many of the time, जैसे आपने कल जो statistical inference में testing of hypothesis समझाई, तो many of the time participant और usually people get confused कि किस situation में लगाना क्या है हमें, कि वो situation understand करना, कि वो किस framework को identify करना.
So that is governed by the objective or the hypothesis that we were thinking, right? Suppose if we go for the comparison purpose, so whether that is a two group comparison or more than two group comparison. If we have two group comparison, then the two groups are independent of each other or they are somewhat related, right? So that's why in that manner we identify the relationship. And related to these multivariate tools, all are related to some sort of relationship, whether it is a dependence relationship, means supervised learning algorithm, or interdependence technique where we consider unsupervised learning, right? So by this,
and sirs, there is a major problem with the people that people from all the domains that we get the p-values. So what do you mean by significant p-value? What do you mean by insignificant
p-value?
P-value?
Simply means if we don't go strictly by the statistical definition, if we make use of some practical definition, probability value gives the chances of having such or more than that of extreme value, right? So if the chances of such a value is quite high, then that may be considered as a normal being. Since that is a normal being, so in that situation we don't reject. But when we have a small p-value, the chances of having such a big difference is very small, right? Since the chances of having such a big difference is small, so we reject the hypothesis, right? Suppose a person says that a group of people living in India is having a height of 8 feet, right? Then we simply say that it is not at all possible, right? There are very remote chances of having such a group, right? So we don't consider that group as a part of our India, right? But if someone says that there lives a group whose height is 5 feet 8 inches, then we say, yes, there are high chances of persons having an average height of 5 feet 8 inches. Means that is a high probability. So we don't reject. So this is the working definition or the working interpretation of p-value. So should we start? I think.
Yeah, we can start, sir. We can start.
So good afternoon, participants. Remember, we were doing regression analysis, and today first I will cover the regression analysis. Then I will start another supervised learning algorithm that is known as logistic regression or classification technique. So as we discussed in the last turn, we have discussed certain terms. Now we are moving forward. So I am sharing my whiteboard just to make the connection with the previous lectures. Remember, in the last turn we were discussing estimation model. We have already estimated, so we were discussing the model validity, means how valid our model is. So for that purpose, we examine statistical significance of the overall model. So for that purpose, we have used ANOVA, right? And where the hypothesis is H naught is regression model is insignificant. It simply means there exists no regression model, means R square is 0 and all the coefficients are 0. So for that purpose, we have considered the ANOVA or the F ratio, and accordingly we consider the p-value, and p-value is small. So if this is the case, then we reject H naught, means we reject the insignificant. Since we have rejected the insignificant, then we can say that our proposed model is significant, means the model that we have visualized is there in the population also, that is significant. After that, we have discussed R square and adjusted R square. R square is simply the percentage of the explained variation, right, which is the ratio of explained variation divided by total variation, right? And adjusted R square is the adjusted value of R square with respect to number of independent variables, because here here we consider the explained variation, and with increase of number of predictor, since variance is always positive, so even if we are going to add insignificant or inconsequential predictors, then even that R square value would increase, right? So R square value got inflated with increase of number, with increase of predictors. In the same manner, R square also depends upon size of the sample, right? If size of sample is small, then R square got inflated. So we adjust R square with respect to number of predictors, number of independent variables, and number of and the sample size. Here that formula is given. Here instead of sum of square due to residual, we divide it by its degrees of freedom. In the same manner, total sum of square is divided by its degrees of freedom, and this is the adjustment over R square. So R square, adjusted R square, is simply the normalization of R square with respect to these two values. So if there happens to be a large difference between R square and adjusted R square, right? So we go with the interpretation of adjusted R square. Why we go with the interpretation of adjusted R square in case of large difference between R square and adjusted R square is, if there is a large difference, it means there is some overfitting. Overfitting means the number of predictors or the features are much more than expected. So large difference between R square and adjusted R square reflects overfitting, and it is because this addition of variables of insignificant contribution, right? And so it simply increases the value of R square, but that is of no consequence. That's why we adjust R square with respect to this term, right? So we make use of interpretation of adjusted R square. Obviously, if there is not much of the difference between R square and adjusted R square, it doesn't matter whether we go for R square or adjusted R square. So as we have run the analysis, we did analysis yesterday. So let me show you these two values which are of importance. Here R square is 0.741 and adjusted R square is 0.733. Obviously, there is not much of the difference between R square and adjusted R square. So in this case, we can take either of the values. Both will give approximately the same interpretation. So this is the role of adjusted R square. Right? So this was the thing that we have discussed on the previous chart. So now I am moving forward. So after that, we discuss significance of the predictors. After that, we discuss significance of the regression coefficient, significance of the predictors. Right? So here we examine, here we take the hypothesis as H naught as beta equals to 0. Beta equals to 0 means no statistical significant relationship between Y and that particular predictor. These betas or regression coefficient B's are known as partial regression coefficient. Beta is simply the standardized regression coefficient. Means we normalize B with respect to scale and unit of measurement. This is the formula for connecting B and beta. This is the formula, right? So we consider beta because this is a standardized value. And here we perform the hypothesis testing of H0 as beta equals to 0. Beta equals to 0 means there is no statistical significant relationship. This has been tested using T statistic. And the corresponding p-value, if p-value comes out to be small, less than 0.05, then we reject H0. Rejecting H0 is, we can say that beta is not equal to 0. Beta is not equal to 0 means beta is significant in nature. Okay, so we look for all those predictors where beta is significant. Okay? So let us consider the output. So this is the coefficient table. Here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 predictors are there. So let me find out what are the significant predictors. The first one is the departmental identity. Departmental identity has a p-value 0.000. This is less than 0.05. This is less than 0.05. Right. Next significant predictor is youthfulness. Here the youthfulness, here also p-value is 0.000. This is again less than 0.05. It comes out to be significant. And in the third case, emotional connect also having the p-value of 0.000. This is also less than 0.05. So they are the significant predictors because here we have a large beta value. You can check the beta value of departmental identity is relatively higher. A relative value of beta value for youthfulness is also high. So we can say that departmental identity, usefulness, and emotional connect have significant relationship. So they are the significant predictors for our model. Any question? Any question?
No, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Right. So we have identified that we have 3 significant predictors. So after that, we try to create a sort of hierarchy of these significant predictors, means which one is having the most predictive power. So for that purpose, we compare beta. Why we compare beta? Because beta is the normalized value of B with respect to origin and scale, right? So it might be possible, though it is not in the case. Yesterday also, Mr. Ravi has asked this question that whether all the predictors should be on the same scale or not. So it is not at all required because when we standardize the value of B, then it becomes normalized with respect to change of scale and change of unit of measurement. So in order to find out which one is the most influencing variable, we compare the beta values. So here the significant predictors are departmental identity is having a beta value of 0.285, youthfulness is having a beta value of 0.312, and emotional connect is having a beta value of 0.399. These are the 3 beta values of 3 significant predictors. So at number 1, we have emotional connect. Right? Because it is having the highest beta value. After that, at number 2, we have youthfulness, because youthfulness has a second highest beta value. And at the third position, we have departmental identity having a beta value of 0.285. Departmental identity is a significant predictor and it is at the third number of hierarchy. Fine. After that, we don't go for an identification of the variable for inclusion in the hierarchy because we are having only 3 significant predictors. So any question up to this point, or things are clear to all of you? Yes, Meena Krishnan, I have given the answer of your question. Among the 3 values, which one is more significant? Actually, all 3 are significant, but the most influencing role or the biggest value, the predictor having the most impact is emotional connect. Okay, so this was your question that I have answered. So any question extra? I will discuss VIF. Okay? So these are the 3 significant predictors that we have discussed. Let me go again.
Dr. Masood, just one question.
Yes, please.
If the significance is very close to 0.05, let's say 0.47 or 0.48, 0.048 or 0.047, then how do we treat that? Is that
We broadly, if we are simply, actually 5% of 0.05 is just a dividing point, right? It gives the impression that here the p-value is small. Fine, right? So it is not necessary that we go with the p-value of 5% only. 5% is just
understood?
a default value, right? So accordingly,
Yeah.
if you think you can change your p-value to even 1%, and 1% would be very strict,
Got it.
you can go for 10% also, right?
Understood. So it's industry dependent and
Right.
perfect. Thank you, sir.
So here we have discussed this concept. Obviously, we can discuss this concept through confidence interval also, but they are in the notes. But I am just for the paucity of time, we are going with this only. So this is a discussion related to all this means what are the significant predictors and what is the hierarchy of these predictors. And in order to create the hierarchy, in order to create the model, since for the model, we require the original values, fine. So when we consider the model, right? So for model, in order to create the model, right? Since we have mentioned the values as y is equal to b0 plus b1 x1 plus b2 x2 and so on. So there are 3 significant predictors: departmental identity, youthfulness, and emotional connect. So model can be created as y is equal to minus 3.321 plus. Here for model construction, we use unstandardized coefficient. Why we take unstandardized coefficient? Because when we considering the model, actually the model is being constructed for the prediction purpose, right? So whenever we want to predict, obviously we have to consider the original scale or the original unit of measurement. Suppose I am taking 2 economic variables. One is the price in India and one is the price in US. Obviously, when we want to create the model, then prices India would always be quoted in rupees and price in US will always be quoted in dollar, right? It is not at all possible for any respondent to convert rupees and dollar in some standardized value. In the same manner, suppose in some regression model, we are having 2 variables. One is height, other is weight. So obviously, when we collect the data, then height and weight would be in the original unit only. Means height would be either in centimeter or meter and weight would be either in kg or gram. Okay. So whenever we construct the model, we consider unstandardized coefficients only, means b values only, not beta. So that model will be y is equal to minus 3.3. How we write? Y is equal to, y is our dependent variable. So first is we are having the constant. This is minus 3.321 plus coefficient of the first significant predictor, departmental identity, is 0.521. So it will be 0.521 into the rating given to departmental identity. So after that, we have x variable as departmental identity. This is the first term. After that, we have youthfulness. Here, the coefficients are 0.415, right, into youthfulness, right? And the last one is emotional connect, 0.649 into emotional connect, that is IC. Fine. Now the question arises, how can we interpret this coefficient. Suppose departmental identity has a unstandardized coefficient of 0.521. So this value is known as partial regression coefficient of departmental identity. Why we say partial regression coefficient? Because there are other variables also. So partial coefficient means rate of change in y with respect to this variable, provided all other things remains constant. So we can say that departmental identity is having a partial regression coefficient, partial unstandardized coefficient of 0.521. What does this mean? It simply means that if we change departmental identity by 1 unit, so there will be a change of 0.521 in the same direction in y, provided remains constant. So this is the concept of partial regression coefficient, because here we have other variables also. In the same manner, suppose we want to make interpretation of regression coefficient of youthfulness. So it simply means if we change the rating of youthfulness by 1 unit, right, then there will be a change of 0.415 in the rating of youthfulness in the same direction. In the same direction means if x increases, then y will also increase. If x decreases, y would also decrease, right? If we are having a negative value, then there will be an inverse relation, means one would increase, so other would decrease, means that will go in the opposite direction. So this is the interpretation of these regression coefficients. Dr. Satish, your question is R square of this model is, no, R square is not 0.12, right? R square is actually, this is the R square value. Let me clear the drawings.
Sir,
Here we are having.
Yes, sir, you are right. Your R square is very good. But in my case, when I studied behavioral finance,
Okay.
collected primary data, R square is 12% or 15%. So
Okay,
people
okay,
are asking
okay.
this.
Right. So if your model comes out to be significant, right, then obviously the model is significant, means they are significantly related. But value of R square is coming low. So there may be different reasons. Number one, some important predictors may be missed. It might also be possible that the relationship is not strictly linear in nature. So you may try some transformations also, like log transformation or etc. Right? So R square simply gives the degree of predictive accuracy. Right? So that means though model is significant, right? There is no doubt if ANOVA value gives a significant value, right? But its predictive accuracy or validity of the model is not so good. Okay. Right? So low value of R square may have different reasons. One reason is we may have underfitting, right? Means some important predictors have been missed, or there is some missed specification. Means it might be possible that the relationship would be different, but somehow we have taken a wrong model. Means we wrongly presume it to be a linear model. That are the possible reasons.
Thank
okay.
you, sir.
Okay, right. So this is about all this discussion. Now we have certain discussion about the assumptions of the model, right? So let me share the PPT also, just to show you what we are going to discuss. Remember when we have discussed the assumptions related to the model. So one of the most important assumption or the most aberrant problem is whenever we have cross-sectional data. So in cross-sectional data, there is an assumption. There is an assumption that predictors should be uncorrelated. Right? Means there should not be high correlation between individuals. Right? There should not be high correlation between independent variables. Otherwise, there is a problem of multicolority. So if this is the case, then that problem is known as multicolority. What is the consequence of this problem? The consequence of this problem is because of multicolority, the variance or standard error of estimates become wider. And since it's become wider, right? So remember in the formula of T, we have somewhat these values. Okay? So if multicolority is there, then variance got increases and standard error also got increases, right? So t becomes small, and t becomes small means here the p-value becomes high, and that predictor is supposed to be insignificant, right? So this is the problem, that yeah, we have significant f ratio, high r square value, but most of the independent variables becomes insignificant, right? So this is the problem. So now how would we detect that our problem is having multicolority or not? There is an important statement that multicolority is a rule, not exception. Means multicolority will always be there whenever we consider the cross-sectional data. So the question is not of presence or absence, it will be there, right? So question is actually of what is the degree of multicolority, where the degree of multicolority is low or medium, or it is of severe in nature. Right? But the problem of multicolority, since it is the characteristics of independent variable which are deterministic in nature, right? So we don't have any test. Since we don't have any test, so we have certain measures to be examined. So the one measure is VIF, that is known as variance inflation factor, which gives the rate at which variances increases, right? So obviously if VIF is high, then variances increase at a higher level, then standard square would be that much higher and t value would be that much low. So for that purpose, we consider certain thumb values. If VIF is greater than 4 or 5, then we can say that we have moderate multicolority. But if VIF, any term is having VIF more than 9, then we can say that we have severe multicolority. So if severe multicolority is there, then some remedial action should be tried, right? So VIF is a measure of multicolority. In the same manner, these conditional indices, right, which is the ratio of eigenvalues, here formula is given. In the same manner, if we are having high conditional values, then also we can say that we are having severe multicolority. So let me go back to the output, right? And if we look for these values, right, so these are the VIF values. So if we follow these values, there is a term, right, which is having a multicolority of 5.6. There is one more term having multicolority of 5.2. So we can say there is substantial multicolority in our data. Fine. In the same manner, if we go for the conditional indices, here one term, sorry. Here one term is having substantially high conditional indices, higher than 30, where we consider normally the thumb value near about 25, right? So we can say that some terms are having high conditional indices. So multicolority is there in our problem, right? So this is the interpretation of multicolority. Okay? So in this manner, you can check different assumptions also that I have mentioned. Okay? Any other question related to regression analysis? Here we check the normality, whether our data is normal or not. Okay? Using Durbin-Watson value, we check. This is the Durbin-Watson value. By this value, we check whether our data is containing autocorrelation or not. Okay? In the same manner, this is again the normality checking of the residuals. That was an assumption that we discussed yesterday. This is a scatter plot which is used to examine whether our data is having heteroscedasticity or homoscedasticity. So these are the different assumptions checking. Okay? So all these are there in the notes. I have provided them, but for the time being, I am not taking up in a detailed manner because just to save the time. Okay. Okay. So if we are having multicolority, then the question arises, how can we know which of the factors are correlated? So one is the normal visual observation, and one very elementary tool for this is we can consider the correlation table. So if we consider the correlation table and look for certain values, so So here, since this is a lower triangular matrix, so same variables are there in the rows, same variables are there in the column. Means all the diagonal elements would be 1, right? So they will be ignored. In the same manner, the first row and the first column simply shows the correlation between independent variable and dependent variable. So they would be high. So leaving these values, so we consider non-diagonal, non-first row, first column values. So this is a high value. Means improved visual and departmental identities are highly correlated. In the same manner, here also there is a high value, high correlation. This is the correlation between youthfulness and superficial, right? So in the same manner here, we have a high value of emotional connect and image transformation. So they gives an indication of the variables which are correlated. Otherwise, we can run principal component analysis to examine what variables are correlated to each other. So by this method, you can check, you can have a overall view or an exploratory view of the correlation among variables. Otherwise, the somewhat more stronger tools are using principal component analysis or factor analysis. Okay, so any other question?
No, sir. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Right. So obviously, I am not taking the very finer details. Just since we have to cover, we have to give broad discussion or broad introduction of other topics also, right? So that's why I am not taking in a quite long detail, but I have shared the concept so that you can follow that. Fine. So now I am sharing another data set.
सर एक क्वेश्चन था.
हाँ, आप पूछिए. Yes.
Can multi-correlate affect R square value also?
No, multi-correlative doesn't affect R square value, right? Multi-correlative affect, since multi-correlative increases the variance actually, right? So because of multi-correlative, R square may be somewhat higher, but a number of predictors becomes insignificant, right? So its main effect is on the p value or t value of predictors. Okay.
Sir,
Thank you.
sir, this is Ravi Kumar.
Yes.
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 Sir, you have told to check multicollinearity, VIF and tolerance value. What is the ceiling for tolerance value, sir?
Tolerance value is just the reciprocal of VIF, right? If we consider the VIF value, normally if VIF is greater than 5 or 5.6, we have a correlation of 0.9. So 0.9 is a big correlation. So normally we go with the thumb value that if any of the term is having VIF higher than 5 or 4, then there is a warning bell. And if any of the terms is having VIF near about 10, so 10 means there's a correlation of around 0.95 or 0.96. This is the big correlation. So they are the thumb values for VIF. And obviously tolerance is the inverse of the VIF. If VIFs are very high, then tolerance or TOL would be quite low. So either we interpret VIF or we interpret tolerance, both are the same things.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. So now I am sharing one more data set. This data set has been picked from Kaggle and a very popular data set that is related to bank loans, right? So one moment. Let me close some of the PPTs. So I am sharing a data set to discuss a new situation. Okay. So this is the data set that I will share today. It is the bank loan data. Right? Here we have certain variables. Here the issue is to decide whether a person would default in the bank loan or not. So here we have a variable that is known as default, which are having two categories. Means no means that person has not defaulted his or her bank loan, and 1 means person has defaulted his bank loan. So bank wants to create a model, a supervised learning model, supervised learning algorithm, so to predict whether a customer would default the bank loan, means he will not return the bank loan, or he will return the bank loan. So bank wants to predict whether the person would be a defaulter or not. So for that purpose, certain predictors are there, like age, educational qualification, years with the current employment, years at the current address, home income, debt to income ratio, credit card debt in thousand, and the other is other debt 10,000. If we ever go to the banks to ask for some type of loan, so bank try to create the index of loan worthiness, that is known as CIBIL score. So this CIBIL score has different variables. So here CIBIL score is not being considered. Here we are considering supervised learning algorithm, so to predict whether the person would default or not. Right? So this is the situation. So hopefully situation is clear to all of you. Okay. So I am sharing the whiteboard to discuss this concept. Here we have a variable that is whether the person would default the bank loan or not. Let it be denoted by Y. And there are certain CIBIL variables. Right? Suppose these variables are x1, x2, and so on. Right? And again, this is a label data. If we talk in the language of analytics, right? Or we can say that this relationship is a dependence relationship if we talk in the language of statistical relationship, right? So we can say that we are going to study other type of supervised learning algorithm, right? Or we are going to discuss another type of dependence associative relationship. But here the interesting thing is, here Y is not metric in nature. Y is categorical in nature or non-metric in nature. So obviously here the problem is not for the measurement. Here the problem is of classification. And we cannot go for regression analysis. So there are other type of classification learning algorithm, like we can go for discriminant analysis, right? We can go for logistic regression. We can go for decision tree, right? We can go for naive Bayes. So there are different type of learning algorithm. Here we are going to discuss this very popular learning algorithm known as logistic regression, right? So logistic regression is a type of supervised learning algorithm. It is a type of dependence associative relationship or a type of classification technique where the dependent variable or the predicted variable or the response variable Y is categorical in nature. So this is a scenario that we are going to discuss in this case, right? In regression, Y was metric, right? Suppose we want to create the CIBIL score, then we go for the regression analysis. But here we want to predict whether the person would default or not. So this is the scenario. Any question up to the background? Any question related to this concept? Why we are considering, or what is the role of this algorithm? Yes, any question?
No,
or is it
sir.
okay? Okay. So we are going to study logistic regression. Right? This slide I will share today because today I am taking up this session. Right? So here the objective is to examine associative relationship between categorical or non-metric response variable, dependent variable, and several independent variables. There is no comment on the independent variable. So independent variable may be metric, it may be non-metric also. Right? Obviously, if it is non-metric, then we have to use a concept known as dummy variables, right? So if the independent variable is non-metric, we will create the dummy variable, right? Here the objective is to find conditional occurrence of the event. That is known as class probability. Like here in this case, we have 0. 0 means no default, right? And 1 is default. Why 1 is taken to be default? Because it is a concern of the bank to identify whether the person would default, right? Here the main concern is not towards the thing that person is returns the loan. One is person don't default. Here the main concern for the bank is whether that person would be a defaulter or not. So whenever the main concern is there, so that main concern is expressed by 1. So here the defaulter or default is being expressed as 1. So these are the two classes, two categories. Here we try to find out the probabilities of P0 and P1, right? P0 means what are the chances that a person would not default. P1 is what are the chances that person would default. So this is the concept. We find the conditional probability of occurrence of event. Why the conditional? Because here independent variables have been given, right? So this is the conditional probability. As I have mentioned that this is a supervised learning algorithm. It is also known as classification problem. Logistic regression can be a binary. Binary means there would be two categories. Logistic regression can be multinomial also, where we have more than two categories. So if we have multinomial problem, then again that problem is being converted into two categories. Means we have a number of binary logistic regression in this case. Like in the first case, we take one variable as the first one and combination of other three at the second one, and so on. So this is the multinomial logistic regression. So here we would discuss binary logistic regression, because multinomial logistic regression is just an extension of binary logistic regression. Okay? Since it requires minimum of the assumption, so it is a very robust technique, very powerful technique, and it is used in most of the situation. That's why it is the basis of the classification algorithm that we use in analytics. So how this logistic regression model developed? Here we give this function which is known as, right? This is a sigmoid function where this function is being made. Here we give that probability of y equals to 1, means probability of default is exponential of z divided by 1 plus exponential of z, where z is, this is beta 0 plus beta 1, that is simply the regression type of regression variant that we have discussed. And this Py and P0, as I have discussed, is known as class probabilities, right? So now we won't write P0, y is equal to P0, since there are only two categories. So 1 and 0 are mutually exclusive and exhaustive, means they are complementary to each other. Means some of these probabilities, probability of P1 plus P0 would be 1. So we would simply write P0 as 1 minus Py equals to 1, right? So here this ratio, this is a very important ratio, right? And in medical research, it is a very important parameter to be quoted in the research paper. This is the ratio of probability of occurrence divided by 1 minus probability of occurrence, means probability of not occurrence. So this is simply the probability of 1 divided by probability of 0. This is known as odds. Fine. So this is odd. Since Py is equal to 1 is this term, so 1 minus Py would be 1 minus this term, and if we divide it, we get Py equals to 1 divided by 1 minus Py equals to 1 as Ez, right? After that, if we take the natural logarithm, so we have ln of this term as ln of Ez. So we have z only. So this is the thing that I have mentioned. So this expression is known as logistic regression or the logit. So logit is simply the ratio of Py equals to 1 divided by Py equals to 0. So this is a logistic regression function. It comes under generalized linear model. Here errors do not follow normal distribution. So we cannot use OLS estimation. So in this case, we use maximum likelihood estimation. And this is the sigmoid curve that we use for the logistic regression. Obviously, a lot of mathematics is there. So I am just explaining why this is known as logistic regression. If you don't want it, you can ignore this aspect also. Right? So any question up to this point? It is simply the mathematical solving. Right? Any question up to this point? No, yes.
ठीक है sir, thank you.
Okay. I am discussing just for the practical point of view by taking certain values. Okay. Here we have two values. One is the probability value. Probability value can be anything. Obviously, if P is a certain value, then 1 minus P would be its different value, right? First, we consider the odds. The odds would be P upon 1 minus P. This is for odds. After that, we have logit. Logit is log of P upon 1 minus P. Right? Now we will discuss different values for this concept. Suppose value of P is less than 0.05. Right? We are considering a particular value of 0.5. Suppose P is less than 0.05. Since P is less than 0.05, so 1 minus P is greater than 0.5. Fine. Because some of the, suppose P is 0.4. So obviously 1 minus P is 0.6. Suppose P is 0.3. So 1 minus P would be 0.7. So if we consider odd, here in the numerator we have P and in the denominator we have 1 minus P. Since numerator is less than 0.5 and denominator is greater than 0.5. So in this case, odd would be less than 1. So here odd would be less than 1. And since odd is less than 1, so log of this odd would be negative. Negative means it would be less than 0. Fine. Now we consider this other value. Suppose P is equal to 0.5. Right? We are considering for a particular value 0.5. It may be 0.4 also, right? But just for the introduction purpose, we are taking a particular value of 0.5. If P is equal to 0.5, then 1 minus P will also be 0.5 because sum is 1. And the odds is 0.5 divided by 0.5 is equal to 1. And the logit or the log of odd log of P upon 1 minus P would be 0. Fine. This is the second situation. Now we go to the third situation. If P is greater than 0.5, okay, means chances of having class 1 probability is greater than 0.5. If P is greater than 0.05, then 1 minus P would be less than 0.5. So if we consider this ratio, so here numerator is greater than 0.5, suppose 0.6, and denominator is less than 0.5. So in this case, it will be 0.4. So it will be always be greater than 1, since numerator will always be greater than denominator. Since this value is greater than 1, so its log would be obviously greater than 0 or log would be positive. So here the logit function would be greater than 0, right? So this is the concept that we will discuss for the interpretation purpose. So any question up to this point, or this value discussion is clear to all of you?
सर एक क्वेश्चन था, ये 0.05 है या 0.5 है?
0.5. Okay. Probably I have said a number of times 0.5 because our habit, because of
P value.
It is simply 0.5, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, thank you, sir.
It is not necessarily 0.5. You can consider these values on 0.4 also, 0.6 also. But with default, always we start with the value of 0.5. Okay. Right. So now I move further to this concept, right? So what is the objective? The objective is same, just like regression, but here instead of relationship, we use the word classification, right? And here we use the word likelihood of success. Likelihood means simply the probability of success, right? And here we consider the logit curve. Here interesting thing is, since dependent variable is having only two values, So error does not follow normal distribution, error follow binomial distribution. That's the reason we cannot use OLS estimation. We have to use other type of estimation that is known as MLE. So because MLE is used for the estimation purpose, it requires the larger sample size. Remember, in regression analysis, we have the must sample size as 5 times, but here the sample size is 10 times. And it don't have any rigorous assumption. That's why it's popularity. So because of non-linear of the logistic transformation, we use MLE estimation. And this is a concept that I have explained on the whiteboard. Right? So let me run the analysis, then I will go, I will come back to this slide and we will discuss different values. So I am running the analysis. Let me close other files. Okay, so this is the bank loan data. Fine. This is the bank loan data. Fine. So here, for the logistic regression model, we go to analyze, and then we go to regression, and here we are having binary logistic regression, right? Because we have 2 categories only. So previously defaulted is the dependent variable, which is the y, which is categorical in nature. And here we take all the independent variables simultaneously. Again, to mention that since we have entered all the variables simultaneously, so the method used is enter, which is the default method. But it is not the only method. There are other stepwise methods also. Right? So all these variables have been entered. Right? Then here, remember, one of the predictor, that is the level of education of ED, is categorical in nature. So for this variable, we have to create the dummy variables, right? So we click. So I clicked on categorical button. So in the categorical button, only covariates are there, and we would be selecting that covariate or that predictor which is categorical in nature. So this is the categorical variable, and here dummy variables have been created. And for creation of dummy variable, the default method that is used here is indicator, right? So indicator coding, in indicator coding, the last category is taken as base or 0, and other categories are defined accordingly. So here we have, suppose we have 2 categories. One is default, other is no default. Right? Suppose the last category is no default. So no default would be taken as 0, and other categories would be taken as 1. Right? So this type of coding is known as indicator coding. Right? So here we are having indicator coding. And then we go to save. And just to for the demonstration purpose, I am clicking 2 values. They are the predicted probabilities and predicted group membership. There are certain inference values also, which tells us whether particular predictors are having somewhat bad influence or somewhat higher level of influence on Y. So in the same manner, here we have residuals also. Residuals is the difference between observed value and the estimated values. Fine. And when we go to option, then we click certain parameters we will discuss during the interpretation, like classification plots, correlation of estimate, just to check multi-correlating, iteration history. Then we have Hosmer-Lomachenko goodness of fit, and we will discuss all when we consider the output. Right? And remember, here the classification cutoff is 0.5. I have discussed the case of also 0.5. Means if the probability is more than or equals to 0.5, that value is taken as 1. If the probability is less than 0.5, that is taken as 0. Obviously, we can change this value to 0.4, 0.6, or 0.7, 0.3. Okay? I will discuss when we can change these values. Anyway, for the time being, I am having the value of 0.5. So we continue this, okay? And then we press OK. So this is our output, right? So this is our output. Okay? So in this output, here we have valid observation. We have a sample size of 850, but we have valid observation of only 700. Okay, 150 is the missing case. We will discuss whether we should consider this case or not. Here the dependent variable coding is no default, the coding is 1. 1 default is coding as 1. And here the categorical variable encoding, which is that I have mentioned, that we are using indicator coding. And here we have number of categories as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Since 5 categories are there, so we are considering 4 dummy variables. If you see in the last case, here all the dummy variables are having value 0. So this concept is known as dummy indicator coding. Anyway, okay. So if you see this output, here we are having building block 0, right? And after that, we are having building block 1, where the method use enter. In building block 0, if you read these values, only constant is included, right? Means building block 0, this is known as null model. In this case, we don't consider any predictor. So this is the starting point. And after that, we enter either variables one by one. As you see in building block 0, variables not in the equation, variable is excluded. Here, all the variables are there. But when we go to the block 1, that is the enter method, then all variables have been entered, right? So here we have all variables have been entered, right? So we will discuss this concept, how we move from building block 0 to building block 1, right? So if I ask the question, obviously all of you will get that building block 0 would be the most rudimentary model, and there should be some improvement when we move from building block 0 to building block 1. So if our model, if our algorithm is able to generate substantial improvement from building block 0, then only we can say that our model is good or our model is valid. Fine. So this concept I am going to discuss, then I will take the questions later on. So this is the stage 2, where we estimate the model and examine the overall fit. Right? As I have mentioned here, the method uses ML. So for the at the first stage, we would discuss model diagnostic. Right? What do we mean by model diagnostic is we examine whether our model, that is the logistic regression model, is a good fit for the data or not, right? So if this is a good fit for the data, then only we would use it for prediction purpose or classification purpose. So how we examine the model diagnostic or the goodness of fit of the model? There are 2 broad categories of model diagnostic. First, related to model estimation. This is the first category. The second category is related to examining predictive accuracy. So first one, model estimation, is based upon the statistical modeling, and the second one, predictive accuracy, is based upon the forecasting modeling. Right? So here we consider the likelihood values, and we consider the likelihood ratio test, which is the omnibus test. Right? So I would try to explain in the simple term, since most of you are not from the statistics background. So likelihood is broadly means the likelihood of happening of this event. So it is parallel to the probability of happening of this value. Fine. So if model is able to fit the data perfectly, then if there is a perfect fitting, then obviously that there would be 100% chance of identification. Since 100% chance is there, so probability in this case would be 1, and the likelihood would be 1 only. Right? So that is the case, that likelihood would be 1 only. So if likelihood is 1, So if we take log of likelihood, which is represented as LL, so the value would be 0 because log of 1 would be 0. Right? So this concept is examined in the likelihood. Right? So obviously in the null model where we don't have any predictor, then fitting should not be good. Fitting should not be good means the L value would be much higher, lower as compared to 1. Since L value would be much lower compared to 1, so we are having a high minus L values. So this is being discussed in omnibus test, right? So omnibus tests, I will show you the output. Here the lower the value of minus 2LL. Minus 2LL is simply the log likelihood. Why we take minus 2? Because in the expression we have a power of minus 2. And if we take the log value, then the coefficient comes out to be minus 2, right? So minus 2LL, minus 2 is constant. So whatever the value, whatever the discussion of LL, that would be reflected in minus 2. So lower the value of minus 2LL, better is the model. Why this is the concept? Because if L is equal to 1, and I have mentioned the probability of likelihood is equal to 1, then this is a perfect model. And if L is equal to 1, then obviously minus 2LL would be 0. So simply the concept is lower the value of minus 2LL, better is the model. Fine. I will show you the values also. So in omnibus test, we examine whether the explained variance is significantly more than unexplained variance. This concept I have discussed when I was discussing ANOVA in the regression only, right? So it has been mentioned here also. This omnibus test, I will show you the values also for better interpretation. We consider likelihood ratio test. We compare two likelihood function. One is null method where only intercept is there, and other one is the proposed model where we have all the variables. Obviously there should be a substantial improvement, right? Means there should be a substantial decrease in these values, right? As I have mentioned, the lower the value of minus 2LL, better is the model. So this omnibus test or likelihood ratio test where two likelihoods are compared follows chi-square distribution. So this I will show you from the output also. Right. So here, sorry. Right. This is the output. So let me have these values. First, we consider model 0. Right? So here, this is the building block. As you see, the minus 2 LL value, right? Minus 2 likelihood value of the building block of the null model is 804, right? It is a big value. So do remember the value that we are having for the null model is 804. Okay? So let us check whether this value has been decreased or not. So if we go for the other value, it is the first method. And if we go for the last value, right? So values started from 801, it has been decreased since we are using MLE, right? That is the iterative method. From 804, the values has been decreased to 612. It has been further decreased to 561. And finally, the value comes out to be 549, right? So if we take this value, so this value is 0.49. Okay. So the earlier value, this value is the null model value where there is no predictor. And the concept is lower the value of the model, better is supposed to the model. So this is the model value. So minus 2 LL value has been decreased from 804 to 549. Right? We would check whether this decrease is significant or not. Right? So this is the decrease. As you see, this is a decrease that I have mentioned. Right? And obviously here chi-square value has been calculated. And here the p-value is less than 0.05. Since this p-value is less than 0.05, So we can say that this decrease is significant, right? So our model is able to create significant decrease, right, in LL values. Significant decrease in -2 LL value. So we can say that we have a valid model. So any question up to this point related to interpretation? Any question related to log likelihood concept? So there should be a substantial decrease. I have shown that the decrease is from 804 to 549, and their significance has been examined by the chi-square test. Here we have a big chi-square value, and this p-value is less than 0.05, means we can say that there is a significant decrease in -2 LL values. Means our model
Let's
is
see
valid.
these questions one by one. For
Yes,
the first question that I have,
any question?
if you look at the terms between this and this, these terms. will
Dr.
be
Veronica, can you speak a bit louder, please?
10, 217, and correspondingly the last term is.
Pardon, can you repeat
399.
your
You have to
question?
find the number of 399. If I use
वर्णिका
the
जी
E
म्यूट कर
formula
लीजिए.
of E
Ma'am is
power
taking
E
class, it
minus
seems.
1 into D. Now substitute this value.
So Dr.
of
वर्णिका जी
kindly
म्यूट कर
mute
लीजिए.
Dr.
N
Veronica.
is 29. Once you get the
Yes,
value of N is 29,
Okay. So any question or things are clear to all of you?
Yes, sir, it's clear, but
Okay, fine.
only one thing, sir. How does model different from step and block?
Okay. So here, since we consider means these are the steps and these are the blocks, right? Actually, model consists of both, right? Step that will consist of means these chi-square values have been examined with respect to different aspects and with respect to different blocks, right? And model is considering both, right? So in most of the cases, these values would be same because same type of likelihood ratio would be employed in all the cases. Right? But sometimes if there is some anomaly related to the steps and the blocks, which means there are different blocks. So in that case, there might be different. So these cases are there when we don't consider the inter method. So this happens if we consider some type of stepwise method, then these values might be different. Fine.
Thank you, sir.
But in inter method, all these values would always come out to be same because in this case, both we run the model only once only, right? So this is the interpretation of -2 LL value. There is one more thing that is, since remember we are discussing the model estimation part only. So these two are related to model estimation only. It is the pseudo R square. Right? Why this is known as pseudo R square? Because here, since OLS estimation is not there, so different statistician has given the pseudo R square value with different formula. Here two values are there. One is given by Cox and Snell, and other is given by Nagelkarke. The issue with Cox and Snell is this is a formula, and this formula is this value can never be zero. Right? Since this value can never be zero, so maximum value can never reach 1. Right? So it will always give the faulty interpretation if we go for the Cox and Snell. So Nagelkarke is an improvement over the Cox and Snell value. So this is a formula where it has been adjusted so that the maximum value can reach 1 also. So this is better to be interpreted, just like R square. So let us go to the output and see what is the value. Right? So here the Nagelkarke R square value is 0.447. Right? Means our model is having around 45% of the explained variation. Obviously, this is not a big value, but this is moderately acceptable value. Since our model is able to predict 45% of the prediction, right? So we can say that this is a moderate value. So this is the interpretation of Nagelkarke R square. This interpretation is exactly similar that is related to R square. After that, we interpret other terms also, right? So this is actually the model estimation, and we also go for predictive accuracy also. So for predictive accuracy in analytics, this is comes out to be more important because here both the techniques that we are considering on this page is related to concept of predictive accuracy. And obviously our model should have a high predictive accuracy. So in the first test, in the first consideration, we consider Hosmer-Lomachenko fit, which is a chi-square goodness of fit test. Since it is a goodness of fit test, so we have the hypothesis as logistic regression model fits is a good fit for the data. And here the chi-square value is being used. How this is done? This is done by dividing our entire data set into 10 equal parts. 10 equal parts means we consider the decile concept. So our entire data set is arranged in an order and it is divided into 10 equal parts. And for all the parts, OIs are the observed values and EIs are the predicted values. They are compared. If our model is a perfect fit, then these OIs values and these EIs values are approximately same. Since they are approximately same, so it means we have a low chi-square value. And since we have a low chi-square value, so its p-value would be high. So we cannot reject the null hypothesis. Here the only clause is there should be at least 50 cases. Otherwise, in each class, we have less than 5 observations and the assumptions of chi-square test won't be implied. So let me show you. So as you see in this table, right, here the entire data set is divided into 10 equal parts. They are the observed frequency, which is from the data, and they are the estimated frequencies, right? This is for no, this is for yes. So if these values are approximately same, if you observe these values, if these values are approximately same, then we have a low chi-square value, right? So we are having a value of chi-square as 9.187. Let us check whether this is a low value or not. So for that purpose, we would consider the p-value. Here the p-value is 0.327. This p-value is greater than 0.05. It is greater than 0.05 means we cannot reject the null hypothesis. Means we cannot reject the null hypothesis. Since H0 is not rejected, right? So we can say that our model is a good fit for the data. So this is the interpretation of Hosmer-Lomachenko test. So any question related to Hosmer-Lomachenko test, or things are clear to all of you?
It's clear, sir.
Okay, thank you. So now I am going back to my slides, right? This is a very important discussion now that we are going to use, which is very much useful when we consider the analytics part, right? This is related to classification matrix, right? Here a classification matrix is being developed, right? This is also known as confusion matrix. This is also known as confusion matrix also. Right? No, it is Miss Solanki, sorry. There is not for yes value, observed and expected values are not very similar in the initial case, but as we move forward, these values becomes much similar. So that's why we don't have much of the difference, right? Let me show you these values, right? So even in the yes case, right, here the value is 0, this is 0.254, not much of the difference, right? This is 0.251, value is 2, and the expected value is 1.114, the value is 4, the expected value is 3.02. So even in this case, there is not much of the value. This is 0.251. So that's why we are having a low chi-square value. If there is much of the difference, then then obviously chi-square value would be very high, because the formula for the chi-square is summation OI minus EI whole square divided by EI. So if OIs and EIs are very much different, then obviously chi-square would increase by much of the amount. Is it okay? Okay. So I am going back to my slides, and this is a very important matrix that we use very much in when we discuss the analytics or machine learning part. It will be used in approximately all the model. So this is known as confusion matrix or classification matrix in all classification algorithms, right? Here we have observed value. Observed values means which are observed from the data. And here we are having predicted value. So in observed value, we have two classes. 0 means no default, 1 is the default. Since our concern is always on finding the success, finding on the default, right? So 1 is always set to be positive and 0 is always set to be negative, because our concern, or we assign value 1 only to our concern only. Fine. So always our concern is a positive value. Fine. So these are the observed value and these are the predicted value, right? Now consider this case. Here observed value is negative 0 and predicted value is 0 also. So this is the correct prediction. Since this is the correct prediction, so we put the term true negative. Tn means true negative, right? So this true comes from the prediction. Means the prediction of negative is true in this case. So this Tn is true negative. Fine. Now we go to this class and this cell. Here the observed value is 0, the actual value is 0, but our model is wrongly predicting it as 1, right? Means model has predicted as positive, but this is a false prediction, right? This is a false positive value. So this value is known as false positive. Remember, negative and true and false are taken from the prediction part. True negative means it has been predicted true negative. It has been predicted false positive. Now we come to this cell. Here the actual value is 1, actual value is positive, but the predicted value comes out to be negative. But this negative prediction is false. So we have the term false negative. We have false negative. Now in this term, here the actual value is positive and the predicted value is positive. Means this prediction is correct, this prediction is true. So here we are having the true positive value. So here true negative and true positive are the correct prediction. So they are the correct prediction. So if we have this value, right, means we have true negative plus true positive divided by all the values. And this ratio is known as hit ratio or accuracy of the model. This is known as percentage of correct prediction. So any issue related to, obviously Mr. Aditya PPTs would be shared, don't worry. Try to understand this table. This is very important, right? So any question related to this value, this table, or this table is clear to all of you? Obviously, I am going to our output also.
It's clear, sir.
Okay. Yes. So let us go to our output and consider this table. So this is the classification table. So participants classification table is clear to all of you? Is there visible to all of you? Okay. So now we should write certain values. Here observed value. So 0, this is no means 0 and 1 means yes, right? I am trying to create the equivalent values. This is 0 and 1, right? And this is 0 and it has been predicted as 0. So this value is known as 479 is true negative, right? This is true negative, right? And this is 38, where the actual value is 0, actual value is no, and it is wrongly predicted as yes, right? So it would be false positive. So 38 is the false positive value. Okay, this is the false positive value. Fine. Now we come to this part. Here the yes value is yes and no. Means the actual value is yes, it has wrongly predicted as no. So the prediction is negative, but it is a false negative. Right? This 90 is a false negative term. This is a false negative term. Fine. Right? And this is 93. And this 93 is yes, yes, means it would be a true positive value. So these are the values. Fine. And the total sample size is, you can add 479 plus 38 plus 90 plus 93. If you sum these values, then we have the sample size. Okay. So is it clear to all of you, this concept? So let me note this value and now I am going back to our slide to discuss various concepts. This is 479, other is 38, next we have 90, and then we have 93, right? So let me
706.
let me have different totals also. So the first is 479 plus 38, 479.
It's 700. Sir.
No, 700 is a total. I
Yes,
am going for different totals also. 479 plus 38. Okay. So the value is 517. The sum of the first row is 517. Sum of the second row is 183, right? And the total is 700. In the same manner, the sum of the first column is 569 and sum of the second column is 38 plus 93. This is 131, right? So these are the values. So let us write these values in our table also. Okay. So now I am going to this table, right? And let me clear these values so to have a better discussion. Okay. Right. So let me take, right. Here we are having these values, right? So let me write the values. Here the true negative value is 479, right? And false positive value is 38. The total is 517. Fine. This is false negative as 90 and true positive is 93. Here the total is 183. Fine. And the column wise total is 569. Right? And here the column wise total is 131 and the grand total comes out to be 700. Right? So first is the hit ratio. Hit ratio has already been calculated in the output, right? The hit ratio is 81.7, right? This hit ratio is 81.7, right? As you observe this value. So this is the percentage of correct prediction, overall percentage of the correct prediction, or this is known as model accuracy. Fine. So 81.7. Remember the value, that is 81.7. So here we are having the hit ratio. So hit ratio can be calculated as, it will be 479 plus 93 divided by 700. If we solve this, then hit ratio comes out to be 81.7%. Means our model is able to correctly classify 81.7% of the observation. Fine, right? So this is the total hit ratio. Now the question arises, right, whether we should go for the hit ratio or we should consider other measures also. So this is being covered under accuracy paradox. This is very important for the discussion, right? Sometimes model will with higher overall accuracy, higher hit ratio may not be a better model. Higher accuracy for predicting a relevant class is important, right? Remember, here 0 means no default. Person is not a defaulter. And 1 means person is a defaulter. So I am asking from the participant, for a bank, whether these two categories are equally important or a particular category is more important.
Particular category is more important.
Right. Okay, Mr. Ravi, and which category is more important?
The
Finding
per-
out defaulter or finding out no defaulter?
Finding out the defaulter.
Right. Okay, bank would be more concerned to find out whether a person would default or not. Definitely, right? So here bank is not interested to know the overall accuracy. bank is interested to know a particular category only. So for that purpose, we discuss these two concepts, and it is very important. The first one is the sensitivity, or that is known as recall. This is the ability of the model to correctly classify positives, right? This is also known as true positive rate. Here, this is the formula. If we go with the formula, in the numerator, we have true positive as 93, and in the denominator, we have sum of true positive plus false negative, that is 183. So if any one of you can calculate this percentage comes out to be around 50%, isn't it? Right?
Correct, sir.
93 by 183, right? The percentage would be around 50%, right? It would be 49 point something, right? It is 50%. So our model is able to correctly classify defaulter by 50%. So would you consider this model to be a good model? Right? If we go with the overall accuracy 82%, very good, right? Very impressive model, right? But our concern is not with the overall model. Our concern is more towards identifying defaulters, right? Then only bank will go for some remedial action. So here our main concern with the true positive value, not overall accuracy. And true positive value is just the 50%, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Okay, right? So here it has low sensitivity. Sometimes we calculate specificity also, right? Specificity is a true negative rate. True negative rate means the first case. The true negative value is 479 and the sum of these value is 517. If you calculate this value, then obviously this value would be very high, probably more than 90%. So 473 divided by 517.
91.4.
Right? So this is 91 point something. Suppose this is 92%, right? But this 92% is not much of the consequence for a bank. So here bank would be more interested to increase the sensitivity or the recall value, or more interested towards finding the true positive rate. Fine. So there is always a trade-off between sensitivity and specificity. If one value is higher, other value would be low. Fine. So these are the different values. These are the different score. So obviously question arises, how can we improve the model? Right? So all these discussions are clear to all of you. Right? It makes sense?
Yes. Yes.
Right? Means this is the value that is given by our model. And remember here the p-value is taken as 0.5. So it gives us the suggestion that we can adjust our p-value. Right? So for that purpose, right, we go for other curves, right? This is receiver operating characteristics curve, ROC curve, right? Why this is so important? Because we discuss optimum cutoff probability, right? Because we consider we can change the probabilities also. So for that purpose, we try to have ROC curve, right? And with this ROC curve, right, we can identify a better value, right? So let me draw the ROC curves also, right? This is the ROC curve. This is a broad structure of ROC curve. Fine. I will discuss this concept. First, I would share. I should run the analysis. Okay. Remember, this is our data, right? So here we are going to run ROC curve. So for ROC curve, we go to analyze, and towards the end, we are having ROC curve. So we have taken ROC curve. Fine. Here the test variable. Test variable means the probability values, because the probabilities values are taken to decide whether that person would go for 1 or person would go for 0. So here the predicted probabilities are taken in the test variable case, and this categorization is taken in the state variable case. And state probability is 1 because we are concerned with the default, right? This person will be a defaulter, right? And the concern is 1 only. So I have the value 1. This is the ROC curve. I have checking with diagonal reference also. We have standard error as well as the coordinate points. Fine. And if we press OK, let us have the ROC curve. So let me share the PPT first, then I will go back to this concept. Right. So let us discuss the ROC curve. Right. ROC curve is used to understand overall worthiness of the classification model. On the x-axis, we have 1 minus specificity. Remember, specificity is the true positive rate. So 1 minus specificity is false positive rate. And on the y-axis, we have sensitivity. This is the true positive rate. And area under the ROC curve is the proportion of concordant pairs. Concordant pairs means the correct prediction value. So higher the AU value, area under the curve, more preferred is the model. Normally we go for area under the curve when the value is more than 70% or 80%. Right. So here we are going to discuss these values. Let me show you. Right. Like in this ROC curve. Right. Here, this is the ROC curve, and this is the area under ROC. Here the value is, this is the ROC curve. This is the ROC curve. Fine. And here area under the ROC curve is 0.8650. Means area under these curves are 0.860. Right. Means this is a high value greater than a default value. So this model can be taken out to be a big value, to be a good model. Right. This is okay. Now I want to discuss one more concept only. So as we know, for further this ROC curve from this diagonal line, more would be the area. So here the points which are at the maximum distance from this horizontal line would be the best point, right? So this point is known as Udon index. So this is the maximum distant point. And if we draw a curve, a perpendicular from this point, so it cuts the x-axis at a particular value 0.02, and it gives the indication that we can adjust our classification probability instead of 0.5 to 0.2. Fine. So let us go for our model. This is our model. Class, this is the ROC curve, right? And here the area under the ROC curve is, let me show you the value. Area under the ROC curve is 0.861. Means overall our model is good. Overall our model is worthy, right? This is the case. Now we are going for the further discussion. Means how we can make use of this case, right? So if we go for these values, let me clear the drawings. Right. And if we go, sorry, right? So this is the farthest point, right? And if we draw a perpendicular, so this will tell us that it reaches at 0.4, right? It reaches at 0.4, right? So yes, I am sharing my SPSS output also, right? It will be shared not only in the SPSS format, but I have converted it into the Word format also. So you will have both the formats. So I will share all the things. So it is the value that is 0.4. So it gives the indication that we can adjust our classification plots, right? Means we can adjust our classification probability moving from 0.5 to some other value. It can be 0.4 also. So for further discussion, let us go to this classification plot, right? Here it is the classification. Now at present, here the values are being classified. This is 0.5. On this side, we have 1 values, and on this side, we have 0 values. Remember, 1 is more important. Fine. Now I change the color. Right. But here both are some classification values. But if we strictly follow this value, so instead of 0.5, if we go for 0.4 or 0.3 or 0.3.5, right? So if we draw this curve from this line, right, then obviously there may be some better classification. All yes would go to this part and all no's goes to this part. So if instead of 0.5, if we take classification probability as 0.4 or 0.35 or 0.3, then our model accuracy would improve, right? Our recall value or the value that we discussed, our sensitivity value would increase, right? So it is a recommendation that instead of classification cutoff as 0.5, consider the classification cutoff at 0.4, right? So this will give a better prediction of true positive rate. Means we are able to correctly predict more of defaulters, right? So this is an important discussion, that how to improve your model. So any question related to this discussion? Probably time is also 4:06 is there, right? So any question related to this? Yes, class, right? So this gives us a suggestion that by changing our cutoff from 0.5 to 0.4, we can improve our model. So you people, this is one moment. So you should rerun this analysis and rerun this analysis, right? Means you will go to analyze, go to regression. You will go to analyze, then we go to regression, then binary logistic regression. And here in this situation, in this case, right? Sorry, in the option case, instead of 0.4, make the classification cutoff as instead of 0.5, make the classification cutoff as 0.4 and rerun the analysis. And you can check whether our model or our solution got improved or not. Okay. So this is all about today, for today. I will share the PPTs, right? So any question, right? Since normally from different videos, you will have the idea of the logistic regression. But in predictive analytics, we are more concerned with improving of our model, right? So this is a method of improving our model, right? So by this method, we have better prediction for the thing of our main concern. Obviously, we are not interested in both the things. We are more interested to a particular category. Okay. So any question or any doubt you can discuss. We have a session tomorrow also, right? But that would be more, that will be towards the unsupervised learning. So this is all from my side related to supervised learning. I have taken a regression analysis, like, and a classification technique that is known as logistic regression. And the table that I shared, that is the classification matrix, would be there in all classification algorithms. And all this discussion occurs with all the learning algorithms, how to improve the learning algorithm. So any question, any doubt? Yes. Yes, Mr. Ravi, Mr. Hemen.
Yes, sir, it's quite clear. It's a great experience
Thank you.
to learn from you, sir. Really. It's a very nice experience.
The question is, can we use ROC curve in OLS? Actually, in OLS, we don't require this concept, right? Where already R square, and since in OLS, obviously we can use ROC curve, but already R square covers a better concept and a better. Since here we are using the MLE concept, and this is more related to classification, right? When we go for the OLS is normally used for the regression, where the dependent variable is metric in nature. So obviously we cannot create ROC curve for a metric variable, right? There should be some categories only, right? we try to find out the classification probability, right? So when we don't have any classification, then how that can be examined, right? Okay. So this is a question from right, Ms. Solanki, right? So is it clear? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Right.
There is one more
Just
question.
Ms. Solanki, right? This is a discussion that we can try different values, right? Obviously, we can go for 0.35 also, we can go for 0.3 also, right? There are n number of measures. Like remember, when I shared my PPT, right? There are different measures, right? And obviously, whenever we provide different measures, it simply means there is not a single measure that gives us everything. So we have overall accuracy, we have sensitivity value, we have specificity value, we have precision, we have F-score also, right? So we calculate all the values, even the Gini coefficient also, right? So this is indeed a discussion to be taken. I mean, this is a decision to be taken. What classification probability should be used, right? So for better clarity, you can try this model for different values of classification cutoff, right? Like 0.5, 0.4, 0.35, 0.3, and so on, right? So as per our objective, we decide which model should be taken care of. Fine. So this is a role of the researcher. This is a role of a data scientist, right? Otherwise, everything is being done by the software only. There is no role of a researcher or a data scientist, right? If everything we leave on the software, right? So as an exercise, you can repeat this analysis for different cutoff probabilities. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so
Okay.
much, sir, for this nice session. And we will be meeting you tomorrow. And I think people have your mail IDs also because it was there in your slide. Okay, if participants have any query, they will contact
You
you
can
directly.
write, you can share your output also to discuss, right? What are the different issues? Because things are very clear when we do this analysis hands-on, right? We have to make our hands dirty. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
And dear participants, many of them were asking about the feedback form. So I just want to clear, once we upload your attendance on the last day of this FDP on the AICTE portal, then automatically you will get the feedback form on your login IDs. Okay. And once you fill that feedback form, you will get the opportunity to take the quiz. Okay. So that would be your assessment, and then you will get the certificate. So feedback form you will get from your login IDs from the AICTE only. Okay, once we upload your attendance. And also there will be tomorrow the session will start by 10 o'clock. It would be on text mining. So you need R and R Studio. So I have also shared the steps for installing the R and R Studio. If you find any problem, so try to install that. If you find any problem, you can put your query on chat on WhatsApp group. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much.